Hello, students. I hope you are all doing extremely well. And I know that you are all waiting very anxiously for the next English class. Before we begin the next lesson in English, let me tell you some very interesting things. Many of you must be having a small built up structure outside your house where you store some things or you keep some garden equipment, or maybe even you tie a cow or a goat. Such a structure is known as a shed. Today we are going to learn a very interesting poem from your textbook entitled The Shed by Frank Flynn. There's a shed at the bottom of our garden with a spider's web hanging across the door. The hinges are rusty and crack in the wind. When I'm in bed, I lie and listen. I'll open that door one day. In the first stanza, the poet is trying to tell us that there is a shed, there is a small room at the bottom of the garden. Bottom of the garden means at the end of the garden. And he says that there is a spider's web that is hanging across the door. A spider's web is the home of a spider. He says that the hinges of the door, hinges means a joint on which a door or a gate is fixed. Now the hinges of this door were rusty and cracked means they were broken. The poet says that when he is in bed, he lies there and he listens, and he's thinking to himself that one day he will open the door of the shed. Now let's move on to the second stanza of the poem. There's a dusty old window around at the side with 3 cracked panes of glass. I often think there's someone staring at me each time that I pass. I'll peep through that window one day. In this stanza, the poet says that the windows of the shed are very old and dusty. Dusty means full of dust. And the window panes are the glasses of the window. He says they are broken. The poet feels that there's someone inside the shed, and he feels that somebody is staring. Staring means looking continuously at him whenever he passes by the shed. The poet says that he is going to peep through the window of the shed. Peep means look in through a small hole of the window to see who is there inside the shed. Let's take the third stanza of the poem now. My brother says there's a ghost in the shed who hides under the rotten floorboards. And if I ever dare to set foot inside, he'll jump out and chop off my head. But I'll take a peek one day. In this stanza, the poet's brother has frightened the poet by telling him that there is a ghost in the shed. And he tells him that if he ever tries to go inside into the shed, the ghost who is hiding under the rotten floorboards, there are boards for the flooring of the shed, and those boards that are put for the floor of the shed, they are rotten. So the poet's brother tells him that there is a ghost that is hiding there, and if he ever enters inside, the ghost will come out and cut off his head. But still, the poet is very determined. He says, I will go inside one day into the shed. Let's now take the fourth stanza of the poem. I know that there isn't really a ghost there. My brother tells lies to keep the shed for his den. There isn't anyone staring or making strange noises, and the spider has been gone from his web since I don't know when. I'll go into that shed one day soon, but not just yet. In the last stanza, the poet says that his brother is just trying to frighten him, saying that there is someone in the shed. He says, actually, there's no one in the shed. The poet has realized that his brother uses the shed as his den. Den means a hiding place where he keeps all his things which he doesn't want the poet to know about. So the poet says that there's no one in the shed. Even he says the spider has gone away. So now the poet is deciding to go into the shed, but he says not at the moment, maybe a little later. So my dear students, I hope you have understood this beautiful poem. Thank you very much for listening.